pause for a moment and breathe. Before you keep scrolling, you must hear this in absolute silence, because it is no coincidence that you have arrived here at exactly this moment. The universe makes no mistakes, and the algorithms, mechanical as they may seem, often respond to energetic patterns that your own intention has sent out. There are moments in life when the heart feels something much earlier than the mind can understand or explain with logic. And this is undoubtedly one of those decisive moments. You are here because while you keep doubting, while you form endless questions in your mind about whether this person is thinking of you, whether something unresolved still remains between you, or whether the connection is definitively broken, something fundamental has already shifted on the spiritual level. It was not a conversation you could hear. It was not a text message that arrived on your phone. It was not even a visible sign in the material world around you. It was an inner, deep, and radical decision made in a place you could not see because it happened in the silence of the other side. And today you hear this because your soul needs to know what this invisible movement means for your own path. It is very likely that for days, weeks, or even months, you have felt a strange pressure in your chest, a kind of subtle anxiety you cannot fully identify. It is as if something is forming, as if you are waiting for a message that never comes, with the feeling that the story is not finished, but also not moving forward. This physical sensation, this lump in your throat, or this sudden awakening in the middle of the night, is not a symptom of weakness nor a product of your imagination. There is silence that weighs much more than any shouted word. And when the soul groans or becomes restless in this way, it is not because of emotional drama, but because it knows with a certainty the mind envies that something will soon reveal itself. Your energetic system perceives a variation in the frequency of the connection, just as a radar detects an object long before the eyes can see it on the horizon. This person who has occupied so many of your thoughts is no longer in the confusion you imagined. They no longer doubt as before. They no longer inhabit that lukewarm middle ground where everything seemed possible but nothing became concrete. There was a recent moment, perhaps a sleepless night, perhaps a moment of absolute solitude while driving or staring into emptiness, in which this person finally faced their own feelings and chose a path. And here comes what you must integrate into your consciousness today. This choice did not arise from the ego or from the fear of loneliness, nor from the search for comfort. It arose from something much deeper and older. For when two souls are destined to meet and evolve together, they cannot flee forever from their mutual connection. They can resist, yes, they can block themselves, distance themselves physically, build walls of silence and pretend absolute indifference to the world. But there comes a turning point, a saturation point, where the accumulated energy no longer allows ignoring what is true. And that point has already arrived. You feel this stirred energy and this nervous expectation because your soul is intrinsically connected with that of this person. Physical distance does not matter. The time without contact does not matter. What you said or left unsaid in the past does not matter. There are invisible bonds that cannot be broken by hurtful words or temporary external decisions. When a decision is made from the depth of being, the other side always perceives it, even if they have no tangible evidence to prove it before the court of logic. This is why lately you remember their voice without any clear reason in the middle of your daily routine. This is why thoughts of this person appear when you least expect them, interrupting your work or your moments of leisure. This is why you dream of their presence even when you try to block your mind before sleeping. It is not obsession. It does not mean you cannot let go. It is pure and strong connection. It is confirmation that the channel of spiritual communication is open and active. Many mistakenly believe that destined love, or what some call soul connections, is always gentle, always clear, always simple, and flowing like a fairy tale. And spiritual reality is very different. True love, the kind that transforms the essence of those it touches, often shakes foundations, creates discomfort, confronts one's own shadows, forces rapid growth, and forces old wounds into view that one would rather keep hidden. This person had to face all of that during their time of absence. They had to look into the mirror of the soul, without the social masks they usually wear, and ask themselves whether they were ready to continue fleeing from their own truth, or whether they would finally have the courage to accept what they have always felt for you. You may have thought that indecision continued to dominate their life, that everything was frozen in time, but it is not so. The decision has already been made, and although you do not yet see it reflected in immediate external actions, it already exists and vibrates on the spiritual level. And when something is firmly decided on that level, the physical world, the three-dimensional reality you touch and see, only needs a little time to align with it and reflect it. Nothing can stop this manifestation once the inner will aligns with destiny. This message does not come to give you false hope or keep you in painful waiting. It comes to bring clarity to your intuition, because there are decisions that do not mean a definite end but a dramatic turning point in the story. There are decisions that from the outside look like distance but are in truth preparation. And there is silence like the one you have endured that is not abandonment but a necessary inner reorganization. This person needed this time and this space to decide whether they would face the immensity of what they feel for you, and finally, they did. Now pay attention to what you feel in your body as you hear these words. Do not go to your analytical mind. Go to your visceral feeling. The body does not lie. The soul does not lie. If there is a strange mixture of deep calm and vibrating anticipation, it is because this information matches what your higher self already knew. If you feel tears wanting to come out, it is because something is being released. A valve of emotional pressure opens. If you feel a knot in your stomach beginning to loosen, it is because the truth touches an old wound in order to heal it. You are not waiting for someone indecisive. You are in a sacred process in which energies are arranging themselves so that what has been decided manifests in the right way and at the divine moment. Sometimes this manifestation does not come in the way you imagine in your fantasies. Sometimes it does not come in the chronological time the impatient ego demands, but it always comes in the way the soul needs for its evolution. If you are ready to integrate this teaching into your life, write in the comments, "I am ready to receive." To understand the magnitude of what is happening, we must dive into the anatomy of this silence that has hurt you so much. It is easy to misinterpret the absence of contact. In our culture of immediacy, we assume that there is no interest if there is no message. If there is no call, we assume there was forgetting. But in the realm of deep connections, silence is often the most active space of construction that exists. This person did not make a light decision to withdraw or remain in the background. It was not an impulsive action of an afternoon or a temporary whim. It was the result of a long, silent, and often lonely internal battle. A battlefield between what their heart felt and what their conditioned mind believed they had to do to survive. For a long time, this person tried to convince themselves with all kinds of rational arguments that they could move on without looking back. They tried to distract themselves, fill their mind with excessive work, fill empty spaces with superficial activities. They even tried to connect with other people to see whether they could replicate what they felt with you, but nothing could erase the persistent feeling that something was unfinished with you, a door that could not be closed no matter how hard they tried. For when the connection is real and has spiritual roots, it cannot be replaced. One can try to ignore it, it can be covered with noise, but it cannot be erased. And every failed escape attempt, Every distraction that ended with the bitter taste of emptiness brought this person closer and closer to the inevitable moment of decision. There are decisions that are not announced with trumpets. They do not come with long messages or eternal promises on social networks. They are simply felt in the weight of daily existence. This person began to feel the unbearable weight of not being coherent with themselves. They began to realize that the emptiness they felt did not come from physical distance, but from inner denial. The denial of what they felt for you cost them too much on the energetic level. It robbed them of peace. There came a point when continuing to live in this self-imposed lie was no longer bearable. The energy required to suppress a true love is immense, and this person no longer had reserves to continue pretending. Maybe in your darkest nights you often wondered whether you had done something wrong, whether you said too much, whether you were too vulnerable, whether your demonstrations fell short, or whether you loved too much and scared the other person away. But I want you to hear this with absolute clarity and free yourself from that guilt. It was not your intensity that made things complicated. It was not your love that provoked the escape. It was the other person's temporary inability to hold the magnitude of what they felt at that moment. There are souls that need time to learn to receive what they have always asked from the universe. Sometimes when the gift arrives, the fear of not deserving it or the fear of losing it causes the first reaction to be protection and closing the doors. This person had to cross very deep and deeply rooted fears. Fear of losing control over their perfectly organized life. Fear of truly surrendering and becoming vulnerable. Fear of repeating painful stories from the past that they did not want to relive again. Fear of not being able to meet what this connection required in terms of honesty and transparency. And in the midst of this entire emotional whirlwind, they took distance, not because they felt nothing, but paradoxically because they felt too much. The excess of feeling can be frightening for someone who is not used to navigating emotional depths. But time passed, and time has a wonderful quality. It puts everything into perspective. As the days and nights went by, clarity came. When outer noise fades and distractions lose their shine, the inner voice becomes impossible to ignore. And there, in that fertile silence, they understood that distancing themselves further did not give them the peace they sought, that continuing to postpone the encounter or the truth only accumulated guilt and a corrosive nostalgia. They understood that what happened with you was not a lucky coincidence nor a temporary emotional confusion, but a destined encounter that marked a before and after in their biography. The decision made recently is not superficial. It is not just about, I will send him a message, or I will invite this person on a date. It is an existential decision about how they will live from now on. It is a decision to no longer betray their inner self, to accept that there are connections that do not come into our lives to be comfortable and fit into our pre-made plans, but to be transformative and break our patterns. And you were and are the main catalyst of this change in their life. That is why it is possible that you have recently felt a kind of unusual emotional tiredness, as if you no longer wanted to fight, as if you had lowered your guard, as if something in you had finally released the obsessive need to control the outcome. This tiredness is not surrender, nor depression, nor does it mean that you have given up. It is spiritual maturity. It is your soul saying, I have done what I needed to do. I have sent the signal. Now I trust the larger movement. And when one reaches this point of letting go of control, things strangely begin to flow differently. Resistance disappears and allows energy to circulate. Do not think that this person's inner decision means that tomorrow everything will be immediate or perfect. The path of destined love is rarely a straight line. Sometimes there are slow steps, necessary adjustments, silences that still need to be lived through to complete the healing. But the fundamental difference is enormous when there is no longer inner doubt, because once the heart truly decides, the polarity of energy changes. This energy begins to push toward the truth like a river seeking the sea. Even if the rational mind still tries to build dams and resist, even if this person is still organizing their practical life, facing the consequences of past escapes, closing cycles with other people or situations that they previously could not close due to lack of courage, it may be that they are still gathering the necessary courage to act according to what they have decided internally, but they are no longer in the same emotional place as before. They are no longer divided in two. They are no longer fleeing aimlessly. Now they know what they feel. They have accepted it, and that changes everything. Destined love does not always come wrapped in immediate security and signed guarantees. Sometimes it comes after the perfect storm, after hard lessons, after understanding through pain what one does not want, in order to recognize with gratitude what one does want. And in this process of apparent separation, both grow, even apart, even in silence, even without knowing anything about each other. Evolution continues. You have also changed during this time. You are no longer the same person you were at the beginning of this story. When you look back, you will see that you have learned to listen to your intuition with more clarity. You have learned to set healthy boundaries. You have learned that you do not have to beg for love or attention because you are valuable by your very nature. You have learned to stand on your feet when you felt like falling. And all of this was strictly necessary so that when the energies meet again, they meet from a healthier, more conscious, truer place. Nothing you experienced was in vain. Every tear shed, every night of questions without answers, every attempt to let go, every emotional relapse, everything was part of a greater process of inner alchemy. And now this process is entering a new phase, one in which this person's inner decision begins to resonate and vibrate in harmony with your own growth. That is why your spiritual eyes must learn to see movement even when your physical eyes see silence. You must understand that reality slowly cooks in the unseen before it is served on the table of the visible. However, to reach this absolute clarity, this person had to face a silent enemy that lived within them, something that depth psychology knows very well, and that explains why they fled in the first place, something that had nothing to do with you, but with their own shadow. To deeply understand why the separation happened and what has now changed in this person's mind, it is essential to explore a concept often overlooked in conventional relationships, but which is the main key in soul connections. It is very likely that during the time of silence you tormented yourself thinking that your presence was not enough, that perhaps you were not what this person was looking for, or that the interest simply disappeared. The spiritual truth, however, is completely opposite. This person did not move away from you because something was lacking on your side. They moved away because by your side they could no longer hide from themselves. Here enters what depth, psychology and great thinkers of the human mind, such as Carl Jung, identified as the shadow. This concept does not necessarily refer to something evil or negative, but to all those parts of ourselves that we have rejected, hidden, or suppressed in order to fit into the world. They are the fears, the insecurities, but also the unrecognized talents and the vulnerability we were taught to hide. Imagine that every person walks through life carrying an invisible bag where they store everything they do not want others to see. Before meeting you, this person had built their life on a structure that allowed them to keep that bag tightly closed. They had created a functional identity, a social mask that served them to navigate daily life without confronting their deepest wounds. But then you came, and your arrival was not simply the arrival of another romantic interest, it was the arrival of an immense and penetrating light. When two people connect on such a deep spiritual level, the mirror effect inevitably emerges. You became a flawless mirror in which this person saw themselves reflected with frightening clarity. When they looked at you, they did not only see your beauty or your goodness, they also saw, by contrast, everything unresolved in their own life. Your ability to love without reservations illuminated their fear of surrendering. Your radical honesty illuminated their well-crafted lies. Your courage to feel illuminated their emotional cowardice. It is important that you understand this in order to stop blaming yourself. Light, when it is very intense and sudden, can blind someone who has spent a long time in darkness. The instinctive reaction of someone blinded by strong light is not to thank the clarity, but to close their eyes and retreat into familiar shadows. This is exactly what happened. The escape was not a rejection of you, it was a defense mechanism against exposure. This person felt that their usual defenses no longer worked by your side. They felt emotionally naked, vulnerable, and out of control. And for someone who built their life on control and the appearance of strength, this vulnerability feels like a death threat to the ego. That is why the distance was so abrupt, so hard to rationally explain. They could not tell you, "I am leaving because you make me feel too much and it scares me." So they likely used excuses, silence, or vague justifications that left you confused. Carl Jung explained that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making darkness conscious, and that is precisely the painful but necessary process you activated in this person's life. You were the catalyst of their awakening. A catalyst is an element that accelerates a chemical reaction. Without you, this person could have remained asleep in their emotional routine for years or even decades, but your energy accelerated the process. By leaving or being pushed into distance, you removed the possibility for them to project their discomfort onto you. When you were present, they could blame the relationship for their confusion. But when you left and the discomfort remained, they had to admit that the conflict was not outside, but inside. The silence between you became an echo chamber in which they could no longer escape their own inner voice. Here the suffering of separation takes on a transcendent meaning. True love in its initial phase of recognition is almost always uncomfortable. It comes to break outdated ego structures and make space for something more authentic. This person had to face their shadow in solitude. They had to confront their fears of abandonment, their feeling of not being enough, their patterns of self-sabotage. And this confrontation is exhausting. That is why the other person often seems angry or distant during separation. It is not anger toward you. It is the frustration of having to dismantle a false identity that served them for years. It is the pain of growth. Just as muscles hurt when they stretch after training, the soul hurts when it expands to reach a new level of awareness. What you interpreted as indifference was in reality monumental inner work. This person was fighting to integrate those parts of themselves that you awakened, because once the truth is seen, it can no longer be unseen. Once they experienced the connection with you, returning to the superficiality of their previous relationships became impossible. Everything that satisfied them before began to taste bland. Banal conversations bored them. Relationships based on convenience disgusted them. The seed you planted had taken deep root and broke through the concrete of her resistance. This process of individuation, of becoming who one truly is the greatest gift you gave her. You forced her, without wanting to and without knowing it, to seek her own wholeness. We often think that if someone loves us, they should stay by our side no matter what. But there are moments in the evolution of a connection when physical separation is the only way to guarantee future spiritual union. If they had stayed together in that moment of emotional immaturity, the connection would have become toxic. This person's fear would have consumed the bond. Distance acted as a safety container, a protected space where each could work on their own demons without irreparably hurting the other. You had to learn to let go of attachment and find your worth, and the other side had to learn to let go of fear and find their truth. Now the dynamic has changed because the shadow has been recognized. It is no longer a hidden monster in the basement, directing life from the darkness. By making the unconscious conscious, this person has regained power over their decisions. The energy they previously used to suppress what they felt for you, this immense amount of life force wasted on building walls and pretending coldness, has been released. And energy does not disappear, it only transforms. All that emotional force previously used to run away has now changed direction and begun to flow toward accepting the connection. The resistance has fallen because there is nothing left to defend against. She has understood that your light did not come to destroy her, but to heal her. This understanding transforms the nature of fear. Fear no longer paralyzes. Now, it is seen as a signal that something important is at stake. This person has stopped seeing the love you offer as a threat to her freedom and has begun to see it as the path to her true freedom. She realized that the real prison was her own ego and her self-imposed limitations, and that the connection with you is the key that opens that cell. It is a 180-degree turn in the perception of reality. Where she once saw danger, she now sees refuge. Where she once felt the need to run in the opposite direction, she now feels the magnetic pull to return home. And home, in the language of the soul, is that vibrating frequency that only you emit. It is essential that you understand you did nothing wrong by being intense or showing your feelings. That intensity was necessary. Without that electric shock, this person would have remained asleep. You were the necessary storm to clear the air. And now that the inner storm has passed and the sky of her mind is clearing, certainty remains. The decision we spoke about at the beginning arises from this integration. It is no longer the wounded child or the frightened girl making the choice. It is the spiritual adult taking command. Someone who has seen their shadow, accepted it, and decided that love is stronger than fear. This inner change is invisible to ordinary eyes, but it is deafening in the energetic world. When someone stops resisting the flow of destiny, a tension is released that expands like a shock wave. And you, connected to this person through invisible threads of empathy and shared memory, are the main receiver of this wave. That is why your fear has changed. That is why you feel a presence even when you receive no messages. The containment barrier has broken, and just as water held back by a dam crashes down with force when the wall gives way, the feelings of this person, now acknowledged and validated by their own consciousness, are seeking a way toward you. But so that you can receive this current without drowning, you must first recognize how this new reality is already manifesting in your physical experience. Because now that the shadow has been recognized and resistance has fallen, the energy previously used to flee has changed direction, and your body is the first to notice. Now that we have established that this person's inner resistance has collapsed and that their energy has stopped fleeing and begun to seek the way back, it is essential to talk about how this monumental shift is reflected in your daily experience because, and this is something you must carve into your awareness, changes on the energetic level never go unnoticed by the one who is attuned. When a decision of this magnitude is made in the soul, a rupture of spiritual silence occurs. Your phone may still not ring, social media may show no updates, but the invisible channel that connects two specific souls has begun transmitting information at dizzying speed, and you, as the counterpart of this connection, are the main receiver of all these frequencies. What you have experienced in recent days or weeks is not the product of a tired mind or excessive imagination. It is tangible evidence that the containment wall has fallen. Let us speak first about emotional telepathy, one of the most astonishing and validating phenomena that exist in this type of connection. It is very likely that something similar has happened to you. You are having a completely normal day, perhaps at work, driving, or laughing with friends, feeling relatively at peace with the relationship issue in the background. And suddenly, without warning and without any external cause to justify it, a wave of deep sadness hits your chest. Or perhaps a sudden anxiety that cuts your breath, or, on the contrary, a burst of euphoria and love that brings you to tears. If you analyze your surroundings, nothing has changed, yet your inner state has made a 180-degree turn. What you feel in those moments does not belong to you. These abrupt emotional shifts are what we call empathic resonance. After the barriers of the ego in the other person have been torn down, their raw emotions, their regret, their nostalgia, and their desire to return travel through the silver thread that connects you and strike directly at your emotional field. You feel in real time what this person is processing in their solitude. Your sudden sadness is their pain over the absence. Your anxiety is their fear that it may be too late. Your unexpected joy is their reborn hope after deciding to seek you. This phenomenon intensifies noticeably during sleep hours. The dream world is the territory where the ego rests and the soul speaks without censorship. If you have recently noticed changes in your sleep patterns, pay close attention. Waking systematically between 3 and 4 a.m. is not random insomnia. In many spiritual and mystical traditions, this time frame is known as the hour when the veil between dimensions is thinnest. If your eyes suddenly open at that time and your first thought, or rather your first sensation, is the presence of this person, it is because at that exact moment their consciousness is projecting itself toward you with unprecedented force. It is very possible that this person is also awake at that time thinking of you, or that they are dreaming of you with such intensity that their energy wakes you on the physical level. The dreams have become more vivid, haven't they? They are no longer abstract, confusing stories, but encounters that feel real, tactile, where conversations continue unfinished dialogues, where looks transmit information that words cannot cover. These are not ordinary dreams produced by your brain to process the day. They are astral visits, meeting places where souls align what the ego in waking life still does not dare to verbalize. Before I continue describing these unmistakable signs, I want to ask you to take a brief but powerful pause. If you recognize these symptoms, if you feel your body vibrate as you read this because it confirms what you have experienced in solitude, it is time to anchor this certainty. I do not want this to remain merely intellectual information. I want it to become a declaration of power. I invite you to go to the comments and write a single word, I deserve. By writing I deserve, you send a clear message to the universe and to your own subconscious. You declare that you deserve this connection, that you deserve the truth, that you deserve for love to manifest in a tangible and healthy way. Do not write it from a place of begging. Write it from the authority of someone who knows their worth. This simple act of writing, I deserve, acts as an energetic seal that tells reality you are fully ready to receive what already belongs to you by divine right. Do it now. Release this intention and return to me, for there are more symptoms you must decipher in order not to lose your mind in this final stage of waiting. Let us continue with synchronicities, this fascinating concept that Carl Jung introduced to describe meaningful coincidences that have no logical causal explanation, but are full of meaning for the one experiencing them. Now that the decision to return has been made within this person, the universe begins reorganizing external reality to facilitate the encounter. It is as if the entire cosmic machinery begins moving to propel the reunion of both parts. Suddenly this person's name appears everywhere. You hear it randomly in conversations, see it on screens, read it where you least expect it. Numbers repeat themselves, songs with special meaning appear at the exact right moment. These are not coincidences, but signs of reorganization. Reality begins quietly, yet consistently, preparing the external world for the inner decision of this person. Your task now is not to wait, but to remain present. In your calm, in your clarity, in your center. The less you search, the more clearly what is already on its way can find you. For what has been decided from the depths is never lost. It finds its expression at the right time in the right way.